In this first video, we're going to go through the controls and menus that are available with HOBOware Pro. The free version of HOBOware includes some basically the same controls with just a few limitations, a few things that aren't included, like the time-saving features and importing, things like that. So if you're familiar with HOBOware Pro and the controls, HOBOware will be very easy to understand as well. Like with any other software package, there's more than one way to perform a function. HOBOware conveniently gives you menus across the top of the screen, and we also have some quick start icons, some that correspond to actions to loggers or shuttles or other types of devices, and other menu options and icons that relate to how you deal with your data files when they're plotted, how to zoom in, how to change configuration, etc. So we're going to talk about all the different functions here to kind of give you an overview of every button and every icon that's available. The first menu option is the file menu, and this is where you deal with your data. It corresponds to data files, historically offloaded data files and stored data files. So this should be fairly straightforward, self-explanatory. Open a data file. This is where you can open a historical data file from your hard disk or your network that you're connected to. There's also a shortcut icon to this function, or you can do Control O to get there. Merge data files. We're going to talk about merging in a minute in a different separate video. This will show you how that function works. Open project allows you to open files that were saved as HOBO project files, or HPROJ files. When you make changes to a data file or a plot that you have open on your screen, you don't save it as the original data file. You save it as what's called a project. Project files are, for lack of a better explanation, kind of like an image of the original data. It doesn't really include all the data, so the original data file stays intact, but the project file includes any changes that you made to the formatting. So line widths, labels, changes to the time axis or the value axis, those would be saved as a project. Plot and export wireless data. This has to do with our ZW wireless node network, and we're going to talk about that in a subsequent course. Recent files, again, this works just like any other piece of software, allows you to navigate to recently opened files so that you can go ahead and immediately get to something that was open previously. Close allows you to close the file that's open currently. Close all. If you have more than one file open in HOBOware, this will close all of them versus just the active one, which is what the first close menu option is. Save data file is an interesting function. When you read out your data and you go to plot your data, HOBOware will prompt you if you have the preference turned on. There is a preference to turn this off. However, by default, HOBOware asks you to save your data file before you plot it. I think that's a very strong feature in the software because it forces you to make a decision about saving your data prior to displaying it for you. If you choose not to save it at that time and go ahead and plot that data, this Save Data File menu option becomes active, and it gives you the ability to go into the menu and save that data file. There's basically three ways to be reminded, or three avenues of saving your data. The first one is if you have that preference turned on that says save data before plotting, you will be prompted to save your data file to your hard disk or to your network before the file is opened. If you decide to bypass that, you have the ability to go to this menu option and say save data file once it's plotted. Also, if you don't use this and you go to close that plot and you haven't previously saved the file, HOBOware will again ask you if you want to save it or not. So you get three reminders. There's three avenues where you can save your data. Below that is Save Project. The difference between Save Data File and Save Project is if you make a change to how your data is plotted, timeline, axis scaling, adding labels, any of that stuff, colors to your graphs, anything that you change in HOBOware, you have to save it as a project. You can't save that formatting in the original data file. So you'll see when you go in and you make those changes, Save Data File will not be available if you've already saved, because you've already saved that data. You have to save it as a project. So again, you cannot modify an original data file. It always stays pristine and intact. Import text data. This gives you, HOBOware Pro allows you to import data from third-party measurements, provided they are formatted in the correct way per the HOBOware Pro user's guide. You have to have the right header, the series names, the right kind of header configuration, or it won't be imported. And then you can save that imported text data as a project. Import text file from HOBOlink. HOBOlink is our web product for working with our web-based loggers, the RX3000. So you can create text files from custom data queries in HOBOlink and then import them into HOBOware. You can also just save them in HOBOware CSV format in HOBOlink and then use the import text data feature and it will import right in. And again, if you want to save that as a project, you can do so. Below that are two export selections. One is export details, which is all your details, your detail information from your details pane in HOBOware, which include things like your description of your logger, your logging interval, the date, things like that. So it will just be the details, it won't be the data itself. Export table data exports your data table or your Excel data, so your time and date stamped data values. Below that are selections for configuring your data to be printed. So page setup is to configure your page to be either landscape or portrait. You have the ability to preview your product. You print it. Again, printing is just, if you just press print, it just prints the XY plot. It doesn't print the data table. If you want to print out a list of the details, again, with the logging interval and the description and all that stuff, you would say click on print details. Print points prints all the data points, including the time and date stamps. The difference between this and the export table data is the print points is actually an image of your data table. It's not anything that can be imported or used in Excel. It's just an image. But keep in mind that if you have a lot of data, you're going to get a lot of pages of print points. So be careful with that because you could get pages and pages of data. Preferences we talked about in many of our different courses. A lot of these menu choices, these one-time menu choices, you can set global preferences for too. So I would suggest going through the preferences and having a look at those. One thing that I didn't touch on previously in preferences, I'm going to open that up real quick. Up at the top of the screen, you see load preferences and save preferences. You can create multiple sets of preferences. So for one type of data, you may want to set your preference. Maybe your export preference would be one way, or your plotting, or you want to set up rules for different colors and things like that. You can set that up, and then you can save it as a setting. So right now, I already have one set of preferences that I call saved. If I wanted to say create a new one, we can say let's call this our training preferences. And so now when I open up this computer in this version of HOBOware, if I want to load a specific type of preference, I can say load, and then it will give me a list of all those different preference configurations that I've saved, and I can open those up, and then that will retain all those preferences that I had set before. Okay, just something to keep in mind. And quits us out of the software. The device menu option, this actually is for interacting with a logger. Where file was interacting with data files, with device, we are interacting with a logger. So this is where you can select launch, readout, get the status from the logger, or stop a running logger. This is also where you can get access to managing your shuttles, your waterproof shuttle or your U shuttle. This is where you access your management of your HOBO data node network, the ZW network. We're going to talk about that in another course. Configure modules and ports. This is where you can configure like your TRMS or your CVIA modules for the H22, the energy logger. You have access to managing a U30 if you're connected to a U30 NRC, which is our weather station device that is a standalone device. Manage RX3000, again, that's covered in the RX3000 course. It gives you some ability to look at current readings, configure the, if it's a Wi-Fi unit, you configure the Wi-Fi for your SSID and your passphrase and all of that stuff, or you put in a static IP for an Ethernet device. Lab calibration relates to the U26, the dissolved oxygen logger. Select devices. If you have more than one device connected up to your USB port, it allows you to select which one you want to talk to. Default action, we talked about that in a previous video, and this is what you want HOBOware to do when you connect up your USB cable. We have some utilities available also under this menu, and these are our force offload utilities for the different kinds of loggers that are supported, USB, serial, or the shuttle. The function of this is if for some reason the logger header in your shuttle or USB or serial logger it gets corrupted due to some kind of communication error, this gives you the ability to get your data off the logger. It won't be viewable by you, but you'll be able to force offload it. It'll save it as a force offload file, and you can share that with Onset tech support, and they can rebuild they'll probably be able to rebuild your file for you. The reason this is important is because HOBOware and HOBOware Pro rely on that file header to get all the information about the deployment, what the logging interval was set to, what the serial number of the logger was, all of the other pertinent information that is gleaned from that launch window when you can configure your logger. So if for whatever reason it can't read that header, it won't be able to plot that data and offload it correctly. So that's why force offload is an important utility. Hopefully you don't need to use it very often, but it's there if you need it. The next menu item that's available is the edit menu. The edit menu includes all the controls for working with data files that are open. So that's why right now they're all grayed out. I just want to show you, I want to open a data file and show you a couple of different ways of getting to the edit menu. You can get it here, but you can also right click on the graph and get this too. So let me open a data file here. Here we have a data file opened, and now we can take advantage of the edit menu. So to take advantage of that menu, you click on select one of the series, either by clicking on the name in the details pane, or you can click on the series itself right in the graph. And now if you go to edit, you'll see there are multiple selections that are available. Filter series gives you the ability to take multiple data points and calculate some additional information from them. Things like minimum, maximum, or average. Again, this is based on multiple data points. So if you were logging, say, once an hour, and you wanted to know what your daily maximum, daily minimum, or daily average temperature is, it takes all those measurements and creates a new series, meaning a new column of data here based on those filters. Copy series is pretty straightforward. You would copy it to your clipboard, so to your random access memory, and then when you go into another file, you can paste it. That's why paste is grayed out, because we don't have another file that's open. We're going to talk about copying and pasting as well as merging in another video. Adding graph labels, we have a video that talks about how to do that as well. You can put a label in your graph, in your plot, and orient it so it reflects either a data value at a certain point or a specific series. Hide series gives you the ability to hide it in the background, remove the series from the plot, but not permanently, and then you can click on show once it's hidden. Remove is you take it out of the view itself. You're not editing the data file per se. It's still in the data file. It's just you're removing it from the view in the plot. Graph properties, we're going to talk in detail about that in another video here. Convert units is where you would convert from degrees C to degrees F. Like here, I'm in degrees F. If I say C, click on convert, and now we're in the temperature is in degrees C. We also have access to undo and redo. Again, we have an icon at the top of the screen that allows us to get to that information also, or select those. And then there's a preference in HOBOware that allows you to select how many times you let someone undo their changes. So I believe the default is 20, but you can go in and change it if you want to. Again, and redo is just redo your undo. And then copy graph to clipboard copies the entire graph into your random access memory so that you can paste it into some other document. So paste it into Word or Excel or something like that. And again, it's just the XY plot. It's not the data table as well.